And one. Okay. Okay. All right. Perfect. We are now live again. Sorry, everybody. Just had to change some things. Trying to figure out what to do for Brad because I know he's probably going to be out a little bit if he's trying to do it. I think he's trying to do it through the Xbox, which I'm not sure if it's going to transfer over that quick.
Hey, let's see. Pop out.
Okay. Just going to set up one more thing, everybody, and then we'll get started. We'll get Brad in here eventually, but I think we're going to just start the stream because we just are in a bit of a time crunch. Not really a time crunch, but just we got stuff to do today, and I need to do some more basketball stuff. So I do apologize to people. That's not going to be I'll be done
Back
very
to
well.
work.
Yeah, but and I want to work out too before I get too tired. Not the right reason, but you know. But nevertheless, let us just get started, everybody. Hopefully everyone is having a great day. I know that it is Sunday, so I know a lot of people are going to be watching football. But for the basketball aficionados and people that love the game, we're going to be talking about kind of the past week, figure out what's been going on. Obviously, there's some big storylines pertaining to the Brooklyn Nets. Clearly, we talked about that the other day, especially if you guys were in here live with me. We obviously talked about the Nets holding a players-only meeting with Ben Simmons or about Ben Simmons. We got Kevin Durant going with Chris Haynes from Bleacher Report and TNT talking about what he was going through in terms of just, his pertaining to what happened. We're also going to be talking about Zach Lavine a little bit. I think that there is some cause for alarm, I would say, in Brooklyn or in Chicago for the Bulls. I think that him not playing down the stretch in that Orlando Magic game could be a telltale sign about what his future is in the Windy City. But nevertheless, let's just talk to Pete real quick, just see how he's doing. Pete, how's the week been going baskall wise? I know your Knicks took a L the other day.
They took an L. I made a bold claim.
Charles Barkley guarantee.
I did the old Chuck guarantee on that game, and I was mistaken. But I stand by my prediction. It was much less about the Knicks being, or the Warriors being great again, and it's more about the Knicks just being terrible. But the week's been fine, man. It's been a lot of good basketball. I mean, one thing, Bernie, without getting too crazy deep into this, because without we're going to be doing our little cap or no cap segment, but scoring has really stuck out in the NBA to me. Like, I think that it's really interesting. Like, we have 7 players right now that are averaging more than 30 points per game. Like, that's pretty absurd by any year's standards, but especially this year, because a lot of these dudes are making it look pretty easy. And there's dudes that are in the 29s. There's like a few dudes that are right below that as far as, how high their scoring is. Because, like, I think Ja's at like 29.2. I know he just got hurt, but he's at 29.2 points per game and like 8th or 9th place in the, PPG standings. Like, that's pretty insane. So I don't necessarily know what it means. I don't know if it's a byproduct of this new take foul change. I don't even really think it is, because I don't even see that get called nearly as often as I kind of thought I was going to. So I don't know, Bernie. What do you think about that before we get into any other topics? Do you think that there's something deeper meaning behind the scoring?
I just think it's just the change of play, the change of pace. I think, years before, if you guys would watch 2000s basketball, everything pretty much started with the post-up touch. Like, everything was down low. You started inside to go out. And then you kind of start seeing some revolutionary stuff in the 2000s where you had like the Phoenix Suns teams, which didn't really necessarily post up as much. And it was more of like a 5-out spacing. And so I think that's really what it is. I think that it's more efficient basketball to just play 5 out and space the floor rather than just having a guy throw it down there and just having him kind of do some moves, and then a defender would kind of lose your guy, and you could either cut to the basket, you could either spot up for a three. But I think it just leads to some great basketball. Now you're kind of dragging out the big guys from staying down low, which is comfortable, to now being out there. I know the bigs have gotten a lot better about that, but I still think that it's exciting basketball to watch. And you can clearly see that that's the reason why the scoring has gone up. It's just the quicker decision making, quicker attack to the baskets, and just those extra passes. I mean, the Spurs, I would say, are the pioneers of that. And I think that the Warriors obviously took that to another level. And I honestly think the Celtics, if you watch them play, they've taken that sort of 5-out spacing to another level too. I mean, I've seen, this is probably one of the better Celtics teams around. And so I'm excited to kind of see how their offense continues to manifest itself. But I think that that's kind of the reason why there's been an uptick in scoring, and probably the take foul too is a little bit of a part of it. But I just think that, with the way that the rules are catered towards more of the offense, it clearly is also another factor as well. Just being able to get to the line a lot easier, being able to, not get as many dangerous or egregious fouls that you see out there, like, kind of like landing on their feet, Zaza Pachulia to Kawhi Leonard. Like that stuff is like, that's a foul, like no matter what. And so, yeah, man, I think that's kind of the reason why the scoring has gone up, in my opinion.
Yeah, that, and I think too, and we talk about this every stream basically, but like the league is so incredibly deep right now. I mean, there's teams that are like their ninth dude right now on like kind of mediocre teams are better than like sixth or seventh men like a few years back on the best teams. I know that sounds like a hyperbolic statement, but it's true, man. I mean, look at Sacramento. They're deep. That's just one example. We're gonna talk about Sacramento later. I'll just tease that for a cap or no cap. But the league is so deep, man. I think that's really what sticks out to me. You even have like, I don't know, man. We can move on. I think it's really interesting. I'm very curious to see some people actually do some deep dive, analysis, like understanding of like what's going on, how much of it is, the spacing on the floor, the pace of the game. Cause that's one thing too, Bernie, you just mentioned it, but the pace of these games is wildly different than it has been for the past however many years. I mean, like I've seen some quarters that are literally like, you watch a quarter and it's done in 16 or 17 minutes. Like that's insanity that's even happening. I mean, that doesn't even feel like real life when I watch it. It makes the game more fun to watch, though, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, definitely.
You could watch more basketball.
Yeah, it definitely does make it more fun. I personally don't like games that, like we talked about last week with the Kings going to 153, like the highest in history. But I do think kind of like that 110, 115 mark, I think is probably the sweet spot for me. But I think it's going to be an exciting time for NBA fans and just people in general, just like watching a game where there's more scoring. Like I think that's kind of what people miss. These days is that like with more, it's just better. It's just prettier basketball. I think it's going to attract more fans. More people are going to be into it rather than just, oh, well, I'm just here to just kind of, it's kind of like a boring game. It's low scoring. I just think a lot more up and down is probably better for the game.
Sure. No, yeah, I totally agree.
And as we kind of wait for Brad to join in, I know he's got some technical issues with some things.
Yo, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. What's up, Brad?
Awesome. Okay, what up, y'all? I'm just going to talk to my phone. Sorry about that.
Oh, it doesn't actually sound that bad.
Okay, dope.
Yeah. But let's kind of move on to our first story. And the first story, of course, we're going to talk about is this whole Brooklyn Nets drama. I know I talked about it through the week. And I know that it's kind of been an issue, especially with the Kevin Durant interview with Chris Haynes of TNT and Bleacher Report. So I know that that's kind of caused a bit of an issue. And so to the people that don't know, he kind of went on to talk about the reason why he requested a trade at the beginning. Talked about, wanting more practice, wanting more shell drill. I think that he's the first player in NBA history that wants more practice defensive drills. I don't think I've ever I don't even think a high school player would want to do those stuff. But he just, that's kind of his prerogative. He likes that. Steve Nash was probably saying no to that. And, he kind of is on the side of Jacque Vaughn, And then, of course, he talks about his teammates here, and he says this quote, looking at our starting lineup, Edmund Sumner, Royce O'Neal, Joe Harris, Nick Claxton to me, it's not disrespect, but what are you expecting from that group? Durant said, you expect us to win because I'm out there, so if you're watching from that lens, you're expecting us to play well because number 7 is out there. And then he obviously goes on to talk about how he feels like he's having a great time out there on the court, feels like he's enjoying the moment. And he kind of says that as part of when I tore my Achilles in the pandemic, I don't know if we were going to play again. I don't know if I was going to play again. And, he kind of continues on talking more stuff about, just being a player and just enjoying the moment and other things like that, which I think that last quote that I read, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, with, kind of that mentality of like, oh, you never know if you're going to play again. Like, I get that. But it's the other two things where it was just kind of disappointing to see Kevin Durant seem to be hypocritical to himself. Like, it seems like there's just, I don't know. You guys talk. I've already did my piece earlier in the week. Anyone wants to take the mic, because I was just disappointed.
Dude, this dude is the most annoying. I don't know, man. There's not many guys that like rub me the wrong way as much as Kevin Durant does, right? Because it is always deflecting blame to everybody but himself. Everybody but himself. Because, like, I actually kind of, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the quote where he lists Edmund Sumner and, Nick Claxton, these dudes on his team. He leaves Ben Simmons out on purpose, right? Like you only have this roster because of the trades that you made your team make. You only have these dudes because of that. You would have Jared Allen. You would have these other guys that are out there if you hadn't done that. You'd have Karis LeVert, like whoever you want to come back to. You'd have those guys still.
Dinwiddie.
You made those choices to do that. And that, the one that even like that is what it is. Whatever. GM, KD, he doesn't want to, ever take responsibility for forcing those trades when he did, like the James Harden one in particular. The coaching one is the one that was blowing my mind. Like, absolutely astounding to me that he could send even more shots at Steve Nash, which that's 100% what it was. Sending shots at Steve Nash after he's already been fired. We're not doing enough defensive drills. But here's the problem. You chose Steve Nash, one. You also knew that Steve Nash was coming from the Mike D'Antoni system, right? That's literally brought Mike D'Antoni in as his head assistant coach that first season, right? You knew that was what they were going to do. That is what Mike D'Antoni has always done as a coach. He never was a defensive guy. Steve Nash was essentially doing a pretty poor imitation of Mike D'Antoni. What did you expect? You chose a dude who'd never coached a professional NBA team in his whole life and was coming from a non-defensive system for his whole career. I mean, he literally played for Rick Carlisle, Mike D'Antoni, and what's his name? Don Nelson, right? Like, I just don't even understand like how void of reality you can be, and just blaming all these other people for stuff. Like, what are you talking about? It's not even like you're that great. You haven't been as good on defense since you came from Golden State. And I get that the injury definitely took away from that, right? And KD's never been like a top tier defender, but he's been solid at times, right? Especially in that Warriors run. He was really solid for them on defense. Yeah. But I mean, what do you expect, man? That's all I have to say. What do you expect? You made these choices. You put this team together. You picked these coaches.
I mean, it honestly sounded like a passive aggressive way of asking for a trade, to be honest, because
that's it. Right?
Yeah.
Like, the only explanation.
Exactly, because why are you naming out your teammates like that? Why are you sending more shots at Steve Nash, somebody that the organization was backing, and you made your public trade request and they pretty much stomped it out because they were backing Steve Nash. So it just looks like, I think personally, KD wants off the team, and he took this article as a chance to voice that, but also to come around and speak about his legacy, because he always, KD is on Twitter heavy, and people are always talking about his legacy and talking about, KD, you were a snake, you left, you don't have a legacy because you joined the Warriors, you joined the team that beat you. So he took this opportunity to say, well, my legacy is whatever I teach Cam Thomas. My legacy is whatever I taught Andre Roberson. And it's just like, no, like nobody thinks your legacy is what you taught Cam Thomas, man. Like,
also, let's stand really tall on those guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Great
like
work.
you know what you did, KD, but he's kind of just at the point probably where it's like he knows he can't win and he can't say anything to make people feel like he actually has his own legacy. Mm-hmm. So it's like he's just gonna say, okay, it's whatever I teach these guys. I do respect him talking about, basketball could be taken from you at a moment's notice, and I'm enjoying just playing the game. But I mean, really, what other option do you have? Your president, your GM, your owner all vetoed your trade, and you're kind of just stuck. You don't want to go out there and say you're unhappy. So it is what it is with KD at this point. I think he still ends up getting traded because I don't think Kyrie fixes this team's issues.
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. Like that, because at the end of the day, their glaring issue is and will be defense for the rest of the season. They literally have no way to fix that problem. And Kyrie is a tragic defender. Like it ain't getting better with Kyrie out on the court. You might be able to outscore some bad teams, probably, sure, but you're still at best 6 seed at best. 6 seed with this squad. Like, because we saw that one game from Ben after they called him out, right? And he actually kind of looked like the Ben that they were hoping to get. Like he looked pretty solid. I don't remember which game that was, who they were playing, but he would.
Yeah, they were playing the Trailblazers.
Yeah. He was really solid in that game, but it's one game in the last 2.5 years we've seen this dude play well, right? So that doesn't change anything. I still don't think Ben is going to give you good defense if you go against anybody that is remotely his size at this point. Like anybody that doesn't have confidence that his physicality is just going to overwhelm, he can't guard them. Like go look at the game they played against the Mavs, what Luka was doing to Ben Simmons. That isn't getting better overnight. It's not. Yeah. And he's supposed to be your best defender. So yeah, they're in an awful spot. And two, we were saying he's sending shots at Steve Nash, but he's clearly sending shots at Sean Marks too. That's not even veiled. Like this is your actual GM still, and you're still sending shots at look at how bad this roster is, which, like I said, you're partially responsible for, KD, but and it's certainly a shot at Sean Marks too.
Yeah, I mean, they really should have, looking back at it, I know that DeAndre Jordan was, a friend of Kevin Durant, but man, you gotta just keep Jared Allen, man. Like he's balling out
bad.
Right now.
That was really bad.
And
it was
that's
already weakened to Bernie's status, DeAndre Jordan. No offense to you, Bernie, but you know what I mean. Like he was a shell of his Clippers self, DeAndre Jordan, and they forced it.
He's peaked. I mean, he didn't work in Lakers. He didn't work in Brooklyn. He hasn't worked since he left the Clippers. Maybe he had a couple of stints here and there that weren't too bad, but yeah, I mean, he's at the age right now where it's just like, it's time to just be the backup, kind of play that role, that Dwight Howard role, I would say. Maybe not the one in Taiwan, but this one.
Oh my gosh,
he's balling out. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, the Brooklyn Nets. Again, it just comes back to the decisions that both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant made at the beginning, talking about how they didn't need a coach and how they felt like they are the coaches and they feel like they're running the whole show, and the Nets have let them run the whole show. But I think that there's only really one player that could really run the show, and that's LeBron James in terms of being a GM and things like that. Like I think that's the only player, in my opinion, that could do it. But I kind of want to move on to the next part of this story, and that's, of course, the players holding a players-only meeting to discuss Ben Simmons' performance. Obviously, they played terrible, I believe. This was I think this was the Kings game where they just absolutely just gave up everything.
Yep,
in the kitchen sink. And this is what Ben Simmons had to say. He discussed that he acknowledged the criticism that knows is coming his way. He goes on to say, "You obviously are not going to be happy when anybody's out. But for me, I've been dealing with the knee since the start of the season. It's been swollen. I had PRP injections. I had blood drained a couple times. So it's not a made up thing, it's a real thing. I get the skepticism, but I think one thing with me is that I'm a competitor. I want to play. I want to win. So I'm going to go and do what I can to get out there. And I just think, man, I think he's just capping. If we're going with our cap and no cap segment, This is a total cap.
He's absolutely capping.
Yeah, it's just disappointing because, like I said, I was a big Ben guy. When he came out of the draft, I saw the stats, I saw the movement, and you could clearly see that he can be a top 20, even top 15 player if he wanted to be. But it seems to me that he gets in his way sometimes, and I think whether it is the mentality of Ben Simmons of not like really having that. Maybe killer instinct is not the right word. It's a cliche, and obviously the whole old media uses it. But it's definitely one of those things where it's just like, I want to see Ben Simmons out there, like wanting to be the guy, like wanting, maybe not offensively, but at least defensively. But it just doesn't seem like that to me.
No, he mentally, it's not there anymore for Ben. Like Bernie, we had our debates about Ben for a long time, and I told you. Like, to me, the biggest thing with Ben, you have to put him in a position mentally to succeed. But the problem is that now I just, like, there's no putting that, that rabbit back in the hat, so to speak. Like, you can't do it. Like, I think one of the things, too, is, like, the JJ Redick podcast that he was on, I thought that was illuminating for, like, the accountability factor of Ben Simmons. You know what I mean? Like, seeing how little he was pushed even in that interview by JJ. It's like, what?
Yeah. He was just propping up his
about?
Friend. It was terrible. I couldn't even make it through that interview.
Couldn't finish it.
Yeah.
I couldn't finish it. But that has to be what it was like behind closed doors, too. It has to be. The worst part for Ben is that it's like a boy who cried wolf type situation. Like, even if he is hurt now, nobody's going to believe you.
Yeah. Can we even believe him? Like, yeah.
No, nobody will believe you.
He hasn't even shown, like, it's funny that he says he's a competitor, but he hasn't shown in his entire career in the league any, like, early Ben was, but he hasn't shown any improvement in his game. So how can you say you're a competitor when your game hasn't even changed a smidgen? Like, it hasn't changed at all. He does he's gotten worse. He's gotten way worse. And, we all saw that viral clip of him airballing a layup. We all saw the one of him shooting at the Brooklyn Bridge, and he's airballing shots. And he addressed that on the podcast with JJ Redick. But it's like, this is what people are talking about. You haven't gotten better. It looks like he just, enjoys playing Warzone. He enjoys talking to IG models, and he doesn't really have a love for the game. And he's kind of just content with being a millionaire.
He's a Warzone competitor. That's what it is.
Yeah, he's a Warzone competitor.
He's part of FaZe Clan now with Bronny. Like, that's kind of the thing with Ben. I mean, if we look at the stats, I have it pulled up here: 6.6 points per game. I believe last week he was averaging 5.8 before he kind of had that decent game in Portland. 2-point percentage is pretty okay, but I mean, he's a guy that I know can shoot, above 55%, close to 60%, 2-point shots. And he just, I don't know, like, we look at the stats beforehand, like he's averaging 56, 58, but now he's at like 53. Like, he's just not the guy that we thought he was going to be. And that's just the disappointment in, what's been going on with Ben Simmons as a player. It's like, I think he could have been an all-time great, or maybe not all-time great, but he definitely could have been up there as like one of the best point guards that we've seen in a while. Like,
his generation, sure.
Yeah.
He had all the talent on paper to do that, for sure.
But man, like, you compare him and then you see a guy like Luka Doncic, not to compare two apples and oranges, but you see him just play the point guard position at his size, moving the ball with his eyes, shifting the defense so he can make that different pass that the defense doesn't expect. I mean, that is what I thought Ben Simmons could potentially do. I mean, I feel like he should do a lot of more pinch the post action and see if he can't just like go from the post and like create opportunities. I mean, you see guys like Jokic do it. You see guys like Doncic do it. But maybe Ben Simmons is only, and I think Jared Dudley kind of nailed it on the head. It seems like he's only a transition type of player. He's only good in the full court transition offense. Like, half court is just, you're praying that he just does not get in your way. It's basically what's going on. And maybe that's a little harsh to say, but
it's totally right. It's totally right. You could see how terrible. I mean, you can literally see all over his face how terrified he is to get the ball in any situation where he might get fouled. You can actually see it. I promise you, watch his face. He literally looks like, a kid who just started his first day at a new school. Like, he looks terrified. And I mean, that's like, in a lot of ways, I think that's a tragedy of basketball, of the social media era of basketball. And I think, like, without getting too deep into it, I think we're going to see other Ben Simmons in the future. And I think we've seen some guys that have had very similar situations, not as like in the public focus as Ben Simmons, of course, but there's going to be another Ben Simmons in the future. And a lot of it comes down to these mega high expectations that these kids get put on them when they're 15, 16. Mm-hmm. And then it also is, you live on social media. Like, to me, one of the biggest conundrums with a guy like Ben Simmons is like, dude, you clearly have the mentality, or not the mentality, to be on social media and be a high-level basketball player. But he is someone who lives on social media.
Yeah,
he's streaming. He's in FaZe Clan. He's talking to IG models, like all these things we're saying. But you have to understand how to put yourself in the best situation possible for your own self. But also, you need to put people around you that are going to tell you the hard things that you need to hear to put you in the position to succeed as well. And he clearly hasn't done that. Clearly. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know who. The hardest part is there's almost no one you could even blame, because we don't know who it is behind closed doors. The unfortunate part for him is that he's just going to end up taking all the blame. But like you see, it's been well documented how things in Philly ended with Doc and Joel Embiid calling him out. Yeah. Should they have done it that way? No. But if they had done something like that sooner in a less big situation, who knows what would have been different? They just waited until the worst time possible to hold this dude accountable, right? So in a lot of ways, it's the fault of just, I think, a new era of basketball and us not necessarily understanding what it means to play basketball professionally in the social media era. Because I think LeBron is in a lot of ways a great example, but he's also a super poor example, because there's so many people who can't do what LeBron has done his whole life. Yeah. Like, there's people who are just not built for that life of constantly being in the right position and saying the right things and doing the right things. Whatever you think of LeBron, he's made hardly any missteps in his career. It's a hard example to follow. So, I don't know, man. I feel really bad for Ben, and I would go so far as to say this dude is the worst contract in the NBA. Like, I don't even think it's questionable at this point. Wow. Like, do you guys think it's even comparable to anybody? I saw a poll the other day that was ranking whether or not his contract was the worst or Russell Westbrook, and I just kept thinking, like, you have to be insane to think Westbrook's contract is worse than Ben's right now. At least Russ is expiring. He's going away. So, and for whatever you think about Russell Westbrook, I'm sorry to tell you, he's better than Ben Simmons is right now, which doesn't say much for either of them, but he's better.
Yeah, Russ has actually been playing good, like off the bench.
He's been solid.
Yeah. I heard his trade value is actually going up. Right now, Ben has no trade value. I can't imagine a team trying to trade for Ben.
Nobody.
Is that some the LeBron propaganda, Brad?
It is. Get him off my team, please.
Yeah.
I honestly think you're right, though, Brad. I really do. I think Westbrook's is going up a little bit because these bad teams see him and say, hey, we could have an exciting somebody in the building for 6 months. Yeah. There's nobody who could convince themselves to take Ben. Like, honestly, I feel bad for him because I'm not even sure he could even get another contract in the NBA at this point. I really
agree.
don't.
Yeah, I don't think
he can get an okay contract. I mean, my frustration too is like, look at the stats, man. Everything is going down. Minutes per game, hit field goal attempts. Like,
that's the problem, Bernie. Do you think he has the mentality to take a lesser contract? Because honestly, if he did, I would say that would be the version of Ben that would help him the most. But he's never shown that he has the wherewithal to understand, maybe to lessen his pride a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what the whole situation is, I mean, maybe he's a guy that just decides, you know what, I'm a video game player. That's what I want to do.
Larry Sanders type. Is that his name? The guy that left Milwaukee back in the day?
Yeah, but I mean, like, I just think, there's been a lot of, I feel like he's been escaping a lot of things, man. I feel like I know we talk about him not being been playing, but and again, I don't want, I feel like we're kind of sugarcoating the Ben Simmons, maybe not us per se, but I feel like the media is sugarcoating
Yeah.
Ben Simmons and like, he's okay, like he'll get back to it, like everything will be fine. Like I said, I always love to bring up the Skip Bayless point of like him just bringing up that either 42 or 50-point game in Utah. Like he's not that guy anymore. He will never like he's never consistent to be like that. Like that's just not his game. I think this is who Ben Simmons is now, and I feel like at this point either something happened in his life that kind of got him to where he's at, but like I feel like basketball he doesn't care about anymore. It kind of reminds me of like Darren Williams a little bit when he got that big contract. He does, kind of lost interest in the game, and obviously the skills deteriorate and things like that, but I've never seen a peak before at the age of 24 for an NBA player of like his magnitude and of his kind of caliber that we thought he could have been.
I mean, it's I say this all the time, but it honestly makes me more sad than anything else, because all the jokes you want to make about Ben, anybody, I've made my fair share of jokes at Ben Simmons' expense, but like this is a dude that legitimately looks like a broken person as far as this profession is concerned, and I can't relate to any of these dudes athletically, professionally, being anywhere near that level of competitor, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to know that, like, if that competitive edge goes away, if your mentality is just not there and your belief in yourself isn't there, it's an impossible task to get out there with the best athletes in the world. It's an impossible task. You can't do it. You have to believe in yourself. He doesn't do it. He just doesn't. So I really hope and pray for this dude that he can turn it around, but no, man. I just hope he puts himself in a situation in his personal life that he can get some help and, figure out what's going on in his life.
Yeah.
I would say like an avenue to him getting better would be to blow up the Nets, because then you can start with him as being your centerpiece. You don't want him as the centerpiece, but you can at least build him up mentally like that, kind of say, okay, we traded away Katie and Kyrie. There's no expectations here to win a championship, because that's really probably what's also messing with him is the expectations. They traded James Harden for him, and James Harden looks amazing this year. So if there was no pressure, he might start to come back just a little bit. Then you can build from there.
Yeah. I mean, he literally went from one of the highest pressure places to play to even higher pressure place to play. Like there was not a drop off even in the slightest. Then even then, like the Nets are just as at fault a lot for all this stuff as even Philly was in the first place. Because I mean, you introduce this dude who's already in a chaotic personal situation into the most chaotic professional situation in the last 10 or 15 years. So no favors were done to Ben, but he didn't do himself any favors either.
Yeah. Exactly. So let us know in the comment section down below, people. What do you guys think of this whole Brooklyn Nets drama, this whole mess? I know that it is, stemming from Kevin Durant's interview with Bleacher Report, also stemming from this players only meeting that they had about Ben Simmons' performance and what to do with him in terms of like whether to boost his confidence, to call him out more. But again, let us know in the comment section down below. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. If you are new to the channel, again, all that stuff helps out the channel tremendously and helps us grow to become something special. And we hope that you guys continue to share the stuff with other people as well. All right. Let's move on to the next story. And that is, of course, another kind of interesting dilemma or situation kind of being brought up. And that is, of course, the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls are kind of dealing with their whole mess. It seems like, Lonzo Ball's still hurt. And things like that. But a story that just came out from Zach Lavine, and he really got pissed at Billy Donovan, was the game against the Orlando Magic. And the article goes on to say, or I should say, Zach Lavine's quote says this: Lavine didn't agree with the decision, which Donovan anticipated. Zach Lavine on sitting out the final 3:43 of tonight's loss to Orlando. That's Billy's decision. He's got to live with it. Do I agree with it? No. I think I'm going to go out there and still be me, even if I go out there and miss some shots, but that's his decision. He has to stand on it. And this is going to be a very interesting, I would say, situation brewing in the Windy City. I'm very curious to see if Zach Lavine eventually gets traded or what happens with him, because he had the opportunity to leave last year, decided not to, decided to sign that extension. And I'll leave it up to you guys. The ball's in your guys' court. Like, what do you make of this whole Zach Lavine kind of left out at the end of it? And I'll have the Zach Lavine stats up as well to show you guys what's been going on with him. It seems like the stats have been falling a little bit for him.
Well, first and foremost, shout out the Bothell boy. I don't want to slander him too much because that's my dog. Like, got to represent for a local kid. But I feel you're right, Bernie. Like, this has been brewing for a while, and Billy Donovan didn't do himself any favors by benching Zach. I know Zach was playing terrible, but he is right. They just extended him, paid him $200+ million. Like, is it really the right move to be sitting your star in a November game, like against the Magic? I know you want to win this game, but I know he was without Paul. That's a tough loss. That's a really bad loss. But it just furthers the gap that Zach has between the front office and between each other. I feel like Zach should have been out there. I know he was stinking it up, and I know they went on a run, but you can't bench someone that you just gave $200 million to. It just isn't. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, and especially too, like, I think a lot of this Bulls situation is kind of like a I don't know how to phrase this, but I think it was they put a Band-Aid over a situation that was going to kind of get to this point eventually anyway, I thought, right? Because we talked a lot about Zach Lavine. I almost said Ben Simmons again. Zach Lavine a couple of years ago before DeRozan even came to Chicago, right? And it was really looking like Zach Lavine was going to get his way out of Chicago. He was done with it. They signed DeMar DeRozan. Zach Lavine goes to the Olympics. He plays the best defense I've ever seen him play. That was where he started to change my opinion of him as a player and what he could be, like long-term, as far as like a 2 or a 3 on like an actual championship team. And I really legitimately think he still has that in him. I did not believe that before 2 years ago. So I don't really understand putting him on the bench. Even if you're going to lose, you don't bench your star player. Because even then, Rosen might be your star right now, but Rosen's 33 or 34. He's on I think he only has a year after this on his extension, right? Because I think he only signed 3 years with Chicago. You have to think a little bit more long term than this. Like, you can't think one game, we're gonna bench Zach Lavine to get this win against Orlando. And they were so far behind. And I know DeMar DeRozan had a great game. He almost brought him back to win that one, but it's just, you can't do that to your guys. You can't do it. It's the I mean, like, I'll give credit to Steve Kerr in Golden State. And Bernie, we talked about this last weekend. I was telling you a lot of problems I had with the Warriors as far as how they were handling things and, wanting their cake and eating it too, as far as, having these old guys who aren't playing well, but also trying to get these young dudes out on the court, or not in some cases, like Kuminga and Moody. But Steve Kerr has done really well. I'll give him all the credit in the world. Those are his dudes. These are his star guys who have, brought him. And I know it's not the same with Chicago. They have no success with these guys, whereas the Warriors have 4 championships. But you can't bench a guy who's not who's on a cold streak and hope that their confidence is going to get better. You can't do that. That's literally not how it works. That's the opposite of that. And realistically, you also have to be realistic about like what is going on with your team. Lonzo Ball is hurt. You weren't planning that. You don't really have a legit traditional point guard for this team. You don't. So, man, a lot of this is on Billy Donovan. We were talking about this in our group chat the other night. The coaching is just horrendous for this team. I don't really understand what they do on offense most nights. And last season was the same thing. The difference was that DeMar DeRozan was so freakishly good for a huge stretch of the season last year that he literally was carrying them to wins. And I think it really set a false expectation of what this team even could be for the people on the team and fans around the league. Because people saw them have a good record, beating a lot of teams, but they were legitimately only beating bad teams. Or only beating bad teams all of last season. And same thing is true now, except now they can't even beat the Magic without Paolo on their team for that game. So This is tough. I will tell you, I legitimately do not think Zach Lavine is going to be on this team after the trade deadline this year. I don't see it. Just don't see it because they're not going to get any better. Not going to get any better because Lonzo's not coming back. I haven't heard anything that suggests he's close to coming back.
Probably second half of the season for him.
Even then, does he fix enough of the issues with this team's offense to make Zach Lavine happen? He doesn't.
It would be way too late. Yeah,
he doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Again, my only concern is really just like the stats declining just a little bit. Not because I think it's like a decline in skill for Zach Lavine. I just think it is I think when the stats are going down, like everything across the board, I think star players start to get frustrated. They start to think like, is this really the right situation for me? And I think, we've seen that, not to point fingers, but we've seen that before with Zach Lavine, right? In Minnesota after getting drafted by them. Like he did not want to be there. And I think that eventually led him to get traded to Chicago. Does the same thing happen again? Does he force a trade out of there, and does he decide to go somewhere else? Does he decide to go to a contending team? Can a contending team compete for him?
Lakers.
Lakers. The Lakers have enough for him. You think you get?
I mean, the way I see it,
Westbrook
they kind of got to blow it up
together again.
Well, the way I see it is they need to blow it up and tank because the Magic own their top pick if it's not a top 4 pick. So they need Russ, pretty much the tank commander, to lead them to that top 4 pick. Which also reminds me of how bad that Wendell Carter Vooch trade was.
I mean, we talk about it all the time, Brad. That is to me easily the worst trade in the last 10 years. There is nothing as bad as that trade because literally
the Rudy Gobert trade is creeping up, but we got to see how it ends.
That trade is definitely right there too. But just on paper, I mean, that trade will easily be worse if those picks end up being like, if they end up getting Wembanyama or some craziness out of that. Sure, that'll take the cake. But on paper now, I find it really hard to believe this one's going to get outdone. Vooch for Hans Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr., and then whatever that pick is going to be. And that pick is pretty good. So that pick looks worse and worse by the day because Vooch at this point, I mean, I don't know. I don't even understand like what they
Wendell's
thought Vooch
better.
was going to be.
That's ridiculous.
Wendell Carter's better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so ugly.
Yeah,
it's so ugly.
One thing I'll say is shout out to the Orlando Magic coaching staff, man. I think they've really transformed Wendell Carter Jr.
And Bol.
Like making and Wagner too. I mean, they're making these, and Paulo, for that matter. I think Paulo is a lot more aggressive than he's ever been. I think since I've seen him play, like even Duke or even O'Day here in Seattle. Like I mean, they've changed them. They call it the mentality monsters. Like they changed the mentality of these players, and they just become. They believe, like when a coach believes in you, man. The way that I think that what's the Orlando Magic's coach name?
Jamal Mosley.
The way that Jamal Mosley believes in those guys, I mean, you can clearly see like it's working in Orlando. But again, going back to the Chicago thing, I mean, this is one of those things where last year a lot of people thought that they were a top 4, top 3 seed. I had my doubts about that because I just think that as much as I love Zach Lavine, as much as I love Lonzo Ball, the concern to me was always going to be like the Vucevic and really, not to kind of, beat on a dead horse for Zach Lavine, but like if Zach Lavine is not happy, you don't get the best version of Zach Lavine. Like you get a person who's frustrated, and you can clearly see that with the way the stats have been going and the way that, taking him out because Billy Donovan, for whatever reason, wants to take him out. I'm not sure why. I think that's just the icing on the cake. And I think if one more thing happens like that again this year, he's gone. And I think that he's moving on to a different team. And I'm not sure what team that'll be. Brad says the Lakers. I'm not sure if that's.
They don't even have the cap space, but I wish.
Yeah, but maybe it's another team out there. I'm not sure who else.
In the Knicks, I'll tell you what, the Knicks have said they were interested in Lavine before. Yeah, I mean, they're going to do something. So somebody will go get Lavine too, because he's not as valuable as like an AD or a Karl Anthony Towns. He's not as valuable. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about SGA right now because we're going to bring him up later. Again, of course, I have to bring up SGA. but he's not even as valuable as him at this point. So there's going to be somebody who convinces they want Lavine because he's what, 27 still, 28. I mean, he's still right in his prime. Yeah, he's right in his prime. Go get him. His extension isn't that crazy either, considering what it's going to be in a year or two. So I would say, yeah, somebody should go get him. But my last thing with this team, and I think Bernie, you really hit the nail on the head with Jamal Mosley and the Magic, right? They're a great example. Like one of the things that has been very illuminating for me this season, right? And I've noticed it. I think it's stuck out a lot more than other seasons. Is coaches putting their players in the best positions for the players themselves, right? Knowing what's best for their players and, actually thinking about not just one single game, not just about what's working in the moment, but also, empowering these guys to play the best basketball they can, right? Yeah. And creating this atmosphere of, we all care about each other no matter if you're playing well or not. We're going to figure it out tomorrow, right? I think like a coach like Billy Donovan is a very poor example of that. Same thing with Tibbs. Same thing with Doc Rivers. There's a handful of these guys. There's a handful of these guys in the NBA. And if you watch them on a night in, night out basis, and then you compare and contrast it with guys like Jamal Mosley, JB Bickerstaff, Taylor Jenkins, all these dudes, if you compare it with that, it is crazy the difference. You can see how much their players respond to what these coaches are saying just by the pure fact they feel their coach has their best interest in mind. Right? Yeah. And that's one thing, going back not too deep into the Brooklyn thing, but that's basically what KD was saying. Whether or not it's fair or not in his situation isn't the point, but that is what he was trying to point out about Steve Nash and Jacques Vaughn, right? He was saying, like, we want to be in the best position to succeed as a team. Like, if you're not coaching us to the best of your ability and doing everything you can to put us in a position where we're not going to look like idiots, what are you here for as a coach, right? And that's a super fair criticism. That is a very fair criticism of Steve Nash. We don't need to go into the fact he picked Steve Nash, but it's fair because Steve Nash was not doing that. And seemingly Jacques Vaughn is going to do that. You already have seen Ben Simmons respond well, but Billy Donovan has never done that. We've seen how his players have responded to him in the past. People have always felt this way about Billy Donovan. And even then, Billy Donovan has never really succeeded in the NBA. So I don't really get why you're sticking with guys like him at this point when there's just better coaches out there. There's just better coaches. I would actually be much, much sooner getting rid of Billy Donovan than trading Zach Lavine. I just don't know if I think it might be too late for that, with Lavine in particular.
Yeah. I mean, they got to decide quickly, like, what's the next step for them, because
DeRozan, like we talked about, not much longer.
Yeah, I mean, that might be another situation where they might have to trade DeRozan. I don't know. They need to figure something out because it's just obviously not working in Chicago at the current moment.
And one other thing for this team is how bad they've drafted. And I know that might be a little unfair because Io has been very, very good for them. I still have some stock in Patrick Williams, but I mean, if you look at they've had some high picks in these drafts for the last 10 years now, right? And that's amounted to Kobe White, who played 4 minutes in that Magic loss. You have Io, who was super solid in that game, and then you have Patrick Williams, who had 12 points in that game, right? None of their other picks are there. Wendell Carter is off playing his best basketball somewhere else, like we talked about. So front office is also responsible because they have done no favors to these guys.
Yeah, I mean, the concern is that right now the Chicago Bulls are 6-10 for a team that, again, like we talked about last year, they were a team that people were like, okay, this could be a top 2, top 3 NBA team, and now they are here the year after, and they are currently 6-10. And if something doesn't change very soon, I feel like in the next 10 games, if they don't continue a streak or like they start winning, then I really do think that's going to be L after L. I mean, they're on a 4-game losing streak right now.
I mean, yeah, their roster construction is just pretty bad. I don't see it getting better. And their schedule is only harder. They play Boston on Monday, right?
Ooh, yes, please.
Yeah, you guys.
They're gonna get cooked in that game.
Yeah. Then they play the
I will
Bucks.
tell you now, that's a 20-point loss incoming on that one.
Yeah, guaranteed. Might be another stinker from Zach too, to be honest.
Could have been a Celtic.
I mean, who knows, man? He still might be. Never know.
I like the way our team is cooking right now.
I agree. I wouldn't trade for him if I was the Celtics.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that's one of the ugliest situations, because that pick hangs over them just as much as the Lakers situation. They can't really just tank it out. And I mean, they could. It's risky because they still might not even get the pick anyway. So I don't like that.
I mean, I feel like that's why they would need to cut it as soon as possible, right? To get that top 4 pick. Because otherwise, then tanking isn't going to do you much. But if you're tanking hard, you're probably guaranteed at least 4 if they start now.
Yeah.
Is there anything that this team could do to fix their situation, do you guys think?
I don't think so. I think they're desperately in need of a playmaker, because even when they had a different coach, you're definitely right about firing Billy Donovan before trading Zach.
Terrible coach.
Yeah, because even when they had Lonzo, who's, a great playmaker, he wasn't being used as a point guard. He was being used as like a wing who would space the floor and play defense, a 3-and-D wing. So going back to that draft situation, I really wish they would have drafted Tyrese Halliburton. I remember saying it on the show, Bernie, when we did the draft for that year. I remember saying the Bulls needed a playmaker, and I said, take Tyrese Halliburton. Now look at it.
They'd be in such a different spot.
Yeah.
Or even if they had just moved off of Kobe White before his value was 0, I mean, that dude lived on the bench since they drafted him. Like, it's crazy, dude. No planning.
But people, let us know in the comment section down below, what do you guys make of not only the Chicago Bulls, but this story of Zach Lavine, currently frustrated, says he needs to play a guy like him down the stretch. Let us know in the comment section down below, does Zach Lavine get traded, or does he stick it out in Chicago and Billy Donovan gets fired? Let us know how this whole Bull situation goes down in the comment section down below. And let's move on to our next segment, which is going to be the cap or no cap. All right, Pete, this is your time to shine.
Hey, guys. Second installment of Cap or No Cap. I don't have 48 points like I did last time. I have less. But we've seen a lot of interesting stuff in the last few weeks. So let me just get rid of the Zach Lavine one. We already talked about him. I said that there's no way this dude is a Chicago Bull after the trade deadline. I still feel that way. I just don't see what they're going to do to keep this guy happy or, fix the situation. Let's move on to Sacramento. I think they're a top 6 seed at the end of this regular season, guys. I think they're going to be probably in the 5 or 6 range. I don't think they're a play-in team. I think Sacramento has put together a legitimate team this year. You guys think?
Top 6. Wow.
Let me tell you this too. Did you guys know did they play last night?
They played tonight.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Or today, sorry.
This month, they're literally 6 points away from being undefeated in the month of November so far. They literally only lost on one really bad call, which I think it was it that Klay Thompson shot where he traveled? That, and then there was one other game where they lost on like a pretty poor call too as well. But they really are legitimately 6 points away from being undefeated in the month of November, which would put them at 10-2, I believe. They would have the best record in the league, or not 10-2. Where it would have been 10-4. Yeah, 10-4. They would be right up at the top of the Western Conference. What do you guys think?
I'm gonna say no cap. Watching them, I feel like you're right. They built a really deep team. Mike Brown has De'Aaron Fox playing some of the best defense of his life. He's actually buying in on that end.
The best he's ever played.
So, and they go deep. Davion Mitchell is a great backup PG, especially defensively. He brings a different look to that unit. They got Malik Monk playing great off the bench. Keegan Murray's been a little disappointing, but he does great things in the starting lineup, the dirty things. I like that. I like the Kings a lot, especially with how they're playing through Sabonis and Fox.
Yeah. What about you? What are you seeing with Sacramento so far?
I like them. I think they're definitely a lot better than a lot of people expected. But I'm gonna say cap. I still think at the end of the day, the Sacramento Kings are the Sacramento Kings, and I think that, again, not to say that they won't do something special. I think in our predicament, we kind of said that. What did we say? We said that they were going to be a just miss the playoff or the play-in game, and I just think that they're like as at the current moment right now, they're playing like a really good play-in team, but I still think that they are. I still think they don't have the talent to really carry them over the hump of being a play like top 6, above the Pelicans, above the Clippers, above those guys. Like I still think that there's some other teams that are better than them, and obviously Golden State, which will maybe you have a segment on them, but Golden State I think will play a lot better. I don't think they're going to play as bad as they are right now, and so for me, I think it's going to be cap.
Okay, I mean that's a fair assessment. I mean we literally are slightly less than a quarter of the way into the season. I think my biggest thing with this team, and the reason I feel pretty strongly about them being in the top 6 seed, they're just so balanced. I think that's one of the things that like sticks out to me like really strongly when I watch this team. They have really great amount of shooters on this team. Kevin Huerter is playing the best he's played in the NBA easily with this team. Actually looks like a legit steal for this team. Malik Monk, same thing, is carried on from his Lakers tenure. He's playing just as good, if not better, than he did last season. And as disappointing as Keegan Murray has been, I think a lot of that boils down to injuries and just getting into the flow of the NBA. Because when I watch him, I mean, he does not look like a rookie whatsoever. He looks like he's been in the league for like 4 or 5 years. Like as far as like what he's doing. Setting screens, moving around, and just his basketball intelligence as far as being in the right spot and doing the right things is incredibly high for how old he is. So I only see him getting better as this season progresses, as he gets some more opportunities and, can get his legs under him and stay healthy. But, the one thing that has really, and Brad, you brought him up, it's De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox, I have been a long documented not fan of De'Aaron Fox. I have always said I thought he reminded me so much of Westbrook in a lot of ways. It's uncontrolled chaos, athleticism, but works a lot of the time. And then there's a lot of the times you're like, gosh, slow down just a little bit, please. This dude has the most minutes logged in the clutch of any player in the NBA so far this season. He has the most points in the clutch of any player. He has the highest efficiency of any player in the clutch in the NBA so far this season. That's on the highest sample size of anybody in the league. That is crazy, right? De'Aaron Fox has never been that guy. I think Mike Brown is their coach. Mike Brown is putting a lot of his experience in the NBA together. We're seeing it come out through this team right now because they're playing as a unit. They look really great. I love this team, man. I think they've already, I felt like, proved me super wrong. Like I like what I'm seeing with them, but we can move off of them. Excited to see Sacramento fans. Let us know what you think about your squad. Is this the happiest you guys have been in 40 years? I would imagine yes, probably if you're a fan. Next one. This one pains me to say this. I mentioned that I was going to bring up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Mr. SGA himself. Think he's untradeable, guys. Think he's untradeable. I don't think they can move him. No, he hasn't. Bernie, come on. Now you are straight capping, Bernie. No, if you think he has been untradeable before this season,
he's been untradeable, man.
You are capping.
I'm not capping. I think he has been untradeable, man. Like, look at the way.
You think if somebody had offered that package for DeJounte Murray, the same package last season or in this offseason, they would have taken it in a second.
They're not taking it.
Man. I don't know about that. I love SGA. He's been really great, but his teams have never won. That's not his fault. I'm the biggest SGA fan on this podcast. I love this dude. But it's different this year. It's different.
I don't know, man. Like, I think the way that the roster is constructed and the way that they were going, like, even with Chet Holmgren, whether he's playing or not playing, they were going to keep him, man. Like, he's untradeable because of the things that he does. And to be honest with you, Pete, I think it's going to go the opposite way for the Thunder. I think they might get rid of some of their trade assets and build around Shai Gilgeous.
Bernie, I agree with you now. As far as that, that's why I think he's untradeable. Why would you get rid of him? He's easily been a top 10 player in the NBA this season so far. Yeah. And we're all, like I just said, we're almost a quarter of the way in. He's been, better than Trae Young, better than Ja, in my opinion. He is legit. You have to reevaluate his place in the top, young under 25 guys in the league right now. Like, he is right at the top of that list. He has, there's that stat that's been going around where he just had a stretch that only Wilt Chamberlain has had. That's absurd.
On or off the court?
Oh my goodness.
Both, Bernie.
Both. Yeah.
Both. Have a lot of little SGAs running around.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, this dude is, I know my affection for SGA runs very deep. It's almost a meme at this point on this channel, but I'm just so happy. I can't even, it goes beyond even just proving me right how good this dude is. I don't even care. I just love to see it. He's the most underrated player in the league right now. Like, there is not anywhere near the amount of respect he should be getting for how dominant he is. Because, have either of you seen a game this season that is as impressive as what he did against Boston? Bernie, have you?
No, I haven't.
He was dismantling that team. Straight up dismantling them.
Same defense that was historically good last year. They're legit that good on defense still. And he was doing that. He's getting double teamed whole game, and he's still frying Boston. That was mind-boggling what he was doing to them. Is there anything you guys would trade him for? Is there anything you would even consider?
At this point, no. Not with his skill set and his youth. No. It's great to watch him. Like, looking at him play, he just looks so confident. He looks like he knows nobody can mess with him. He knows he's the best player on the court at all times. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think the frustrating thing for me from SGA perspective is, what were the Clippers thinking? They had that guy on their team, balling out, and I think he was such a young kid at the time. He got drafted by them, obviously, but it's just kind of like, you trade him for Paul George. Like, I get that, but man, it's tough to
that's tough. Yeah,
it's tough to go back.
It's a sneaky bad trade too.
It's not
sneaky bad trade.
It's not.
I wouldn't say that.
It's not bad. It's just like, you never know, right? You never know, like, if Shai Gilgeous was gonna pop like this or not.
Exactly.
But
man.
Now that he's popped like this, hindsight 2020. Shai Gilgeous I think he would actually help that team a lot if he was on that roster for the Clippers. But
are you kidding me? They'd be insanely good. They'd be disgusting if they had SGA. He would solve so many of the issues they have.
Yeah, but I'm actually excited that Shai Gilgeous is kind of like his own guy on the team. Like, he can be the number one guy, take that whole role on himself. And he's clearly shown that he can do it. And I'm excited for a guy like Jalen Williams, who is now kind of starting to get into his own a little bit. I know we're going a little bit off topic, but I think he entered in the starting lineup a couple times. So I'm excited to kind of see how his minutes increase and how he could definitely be a huge impactful player. And like I said, man, I really do think that the Thunder have an opportunity to trade some of these assets away and really get like some great pieces around this whole team. I think this team is good, man. It's starting to become, I would say, the old Oklahoma City Thunder teams. Maybe without the headache of a Westbrook, but
sure,
it's starting to become like that. Those teams again, where it's like you build through the draft. You got some great guys in Giddey and Shai Gilgeous. We don't know what Chet Holmgren will be yet, but of course you have Jalen Williams, who's going to be a really good player. Man, I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see this team shine.
Well, and I think one interesting thing too is, like, up until now, and Bernie, I know you and I have debated this like this whole season so far, is like, how long can you hold this guy on ice and wait for, picks that you don't even know what they're going to be, players who are injured? But now it is to the point where you have to see what he's going to look like next to Chet, right? Or at the very least, like, you have this crazy asset in Chet and all these other assets. Maybe go get some crazy good player you could put next to Shai and Josh Giddey, who is healthy, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, I'm glad to hear we're all in agreement on this one. I think it's easily the biggest no cap of my whole list here. Like he is untradeable. Like there's almost no player in the league that takes more smart shots than SGA does. Like that's one of the things that I love the most about his game. He always, like we were just talking about coaches putting players in the best position to succeed. He's putting himself in the best position to succeed. You know, he doesn't, his like amount of 3-point shots per game has gone down his whole career. He still hits them relatively at a high rate. And even then he just doesn't need to shoot him. He knows he doesn't need to. He can get wherever he wants on the court. It's like, it's kind of crazy. Like there's a lot of his inside game I've seen that's like him and Luka are like kind of the guards in the league that do that type of, you know, getting wherever they want down low, and just there's nothing you can do. Big guy, whatever it is, it just doesn't matter with SGA. All right. The Jazz they're not even a tank. I don't even think they're in the tank running now. I don't even think they're going to go that direction anymore. I just don't see it. I think they're going to make the playoffs too. I think they're going to be in there somehow. What do you guys think about that? Especially, and let me just give one little piece of information on that too, is a little piece of news that came out this week is that John Collins is up for a trade, or he's up in he's the preeminent trade rumor every season. We know that trade season is beginning when John Collins' name gets brought up. But the Jazz publicly were the first team that came out and, you know, their interest in John Collins was shown to be a thing. So what do you guys think about that?
I'm going to say Cap, just because I know Danny Ainge. Like it kind of be,
it could flip it a second.
Yeah, exactly. It would kind of be a disaster, honestly, if you accrue all those picks from the Gobert trade and you don't end up, you know, in a high enough place to use them for who you want. I just can't see them saying, I feel like anything less than a championship is a disaster, you know, because you have a good team, but why would you just want to shoot for making the playoffs when you have all these picks on the back burner that you can get someone good, especially with the talent coming up in this draft? You know, you got the Thompson twins, you got Wemby, you got Dariq Whitehead. Like I would tank.
I probably would too, but I don't know. Bertie, what do you think?
Oh man, I would say Cap in terms of the trade, because I just think unless the Utah Jazz are like, we're going to tank, because I don't think that bringing in John Collins necessarily makes their team better.
I feel like that's a tanking move.
Yeah, I feel like that's more of a tanking move. But like, if you look at the roster, man, like there's some really solid pieces, and it seems like Hardy's been like, he's getting like the best out of everybody. I mean,
oh dude,
like Lauri Markkanen, White Jesus is starting to come to life again. You know, he had those injury-prone years in Chicago, and we thought, you know, this is probably the end of Lauri Markkanen, but he's come alive, and kind of made a name for himself. Obviously, in Cleveland, he played really well, and then, you know, coming here, it was like, you know, was it the Cleveland system, or is Lauri Markkanen actually that good? And it's kind of proven to show that he's not a bad player. Like, he's a really solid guy, probably a number 2 or 3 on most teams that are trying to contend for a championship, but I'm liking what I'm seeing from him. He's played all 18 games. He's not being injury prone as he was early in his career. Jordan Clarkson, obviously an instant bucket getter. That's kind of his role in the team. You know, 18.6 points per game. So I'm excited to kind of see him continue that. What I think is very interesting too was the pieces that got traded for in the Minnesota trade. Guys like Beasley, Vanderbilt, they are balling right now. Like
Vanderbilt is so good.
They're playing so well right now, and I'm actually excited that Will Hardy is, you know, one of those coaches that probably should get an opportunity to be a head coach, but probably at the lower levels, just to see like how he can grow with the team. And he's clearly shown that he can grow with the team. Obviously, it's going to take, you know, we're only a quarter in, so we don't really fully know like everything yet about these players. But what I am excited about is just the fact that he's going to grow with this team. He's going to grow as a coach, and that'll lead to him either staying in Utah, building a championship contender, or he could potentially move on forward and maybe get a head coaching job for a future championship team later down the line. But I'm liking all the players that have been playing so far. You know, maybe one player I would look to move maybe would be Mike Conley. I know that he is their assist leader and steals leader, but you know, as an aging player, I think he could do a lot of justice on a different team, and we'll see what happens.
He's kind of turning back the clock a little bit this season.
Yeah,
Conley.
And then there's Horton Tucker, man.
Oh God. Oh, let's get off. Let's move off of him real quick. Yeah, no, and I hate to give myself another big pat on the back, but Will Hardy, I told you guys, if you went back and looked at what Ime was doing coaching wise and how much he would go to Will Hardy on the bench during that playoff run, there was clearly something there. Will Hardy is no joke. He is no joke. He is the definition of putting his players in the right position to succeed. So, Danny Ainge snaked that guy from you guys so hard, Bernie. Like the Celtics. I mean, obviously, Will Hardy would have been the one to step into Ime's spot, and I don't even think they would have kept Ime around if Will Hardy was there. I think they would have instantly promoted him to head coach. Based on what we've seen, like these guys had to have known this guy had this in him, and he's from Popovich's system too. So Hardy, great coach. I would say, and this is my logic, Brad, I'm right there with you. Like I can see you both said Cap, but Brad, your logic of like, it is Danny Ainge, right? This team could go on a 3-game losing streak and 3 of their best players could get traded the next day. That's what Danny Ainge has done before. Mm-hmm. Realistically, that's all it would take for this team at this point in the season to, change that trajectory back to what we all thought it was. But just like you said, though, Bernie, I think they have too many quality players to even blow it up at this point. Like, I don't even know what they could do that would make them one of the worst teams in the league. Like, I know that sounds silly. I thought this team was the worst team in the league coming into this season. And I will hold my feet to the fire. I was so wrong. They have so many good players at so many positions. We haven't even seen some of their guys, like their young dudes, come back into the swing of things. Like I still think Colin Sexton has a level he could go up to. I'm not a huge Colin Sexton fan, but he's certainly not been as good as he can be with this team yet. And if they did that, get a little move, I don't know, man. This team is a sneaky, like, because I would say, Brad, one thing, it's a failure to get all those picks and do nothing with it, right? Whether it's not tanking or going the other way, because they could just go get some crazy good player. Like they could. They have basically the most assets in the league right now, other than OKC and New Orleans. So this team, man, I would be not surprised to see them make a big swing and just get a good player and say, hey, why are we going to tank? We know we have something at least going on. But I do agree with you, Bernie. I would move Mike Conley of anybody. His value has actually kind of gone up a little bit this season. We just talked about John Collins. Let's talk about him. I think this is actually the year he gets traded. I think it is not. And I'm going to do a cap or no cap on the Hawks. I think they're not capping this time. I think they're actually ready to move John Collins. You've talked about it a long time, Bernie, as far as whether or not he's the right guy to put alongside Trey. And I think this season is kind of showing why maybe it is not the move to keep him around long term. I think we know what we're getting with John Collins and this Atlanta Hawks team. What do you guys think? Do you think this is finally the year they move him?
Yeah, I'm going to say no cap. They're actually going to move him this year. Yesterday against the Raptors, they actually looked better with DeAndre Hunter at the 4 and AJ Griffin at the 3, instead of. And Collins is funny because they extended him and he feels like he should, be more involved in the offense, but he doesn't necessarily have the skills to be more involved in the offense. Trey has to set him up. DeJounte has to set him up. Otherwise, it's ugly. He's shooting a career low from 3.
And these are like all corner threes, like open corner threes.
The easiest shots you can get. Yeah, it's time to move on from him, and they'll be a better team without him, and he'll be able to blossom somewhere else without them.
I'm going to go cap.
Yeah. You think they're sticking with Collins again?
They're going to stick with it. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, right now you're at like 10-6. You're third in the East. Like, unless you are dramatically underperforming as a team in terms of record-wise and just kind of like, I think he just, he fits in there. Like, obviously he's not going to be a guy that necessarily scores a lot, but I think he does a lot of good other things like rebounding, good cutter. Like, I think he does a lot of things, man. Like, 1.3 blocks a game. I know Capella has 1.5. I think Collins is an explosive athlete. You want to keep those type of guys around. And right now the Hawks are third in the East, man. Like, I wouldn't want to mess around with anything. They're kind of finally cooking, and with DeJounte Murray and Trae Young as the pairing of the two backcourts, and I think they're gonna play great, man. I think that when it comes to what Collins does, obviously, like I said, he's not gonna be the third or fourth guy, but if you can just kind of have him, supply those minutes, like we're seeing Hunter's minutes go way up. It's at 31 right now, 31.2. Collins at 31.8. Like you're clearly seeing the Hunter's being used, like Brad said. But man, I'm excited to see what this Hawks team can do when they play a really good team. I know they lost a couple. I think they lost the other night. But I think that they're still a solid team. I think they'll be even more solid as the season goes on.
But do you think that Collins is happy in his role? And like something to remember is that Bogdanovich is coming back and he's going to need minutes too. So maybe that could also be why they want to move him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man, because I think the biggest thing for him was the money. I don't think it was necessarily like playing time or things like that. I mean, if he, like you said, if he's happy in his role, that's great, and if he's not happy, then that's probably the issue. And I do agree with you and concede there that he probably does need to get moved if he's going to be unhappy with another body coming in, taking away a lot of minutes from him. But so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing from the Hawks, man. I think they're a solid team, and I think you just keep Collins until stuff starts hitting the fan. But I don't think anything has hit the fan yet for this Hawks team.
Yeah, I would move Collins right now if I was the Hawks. Just because, man, you guys know I'm not a big Capella fan. I really am not a Collins guy either. I just think you could maximize this team if you moved away from some of those contracts. Like they have some guys on their bench that literally end up playing better than their starters some nights. It's like Okongwu is legitimately one of the better defenders at center in the league. Like I haven't seen hardly anybody play as good of defense against Giannis as I have Okongwu. Like it's probably the two best defensive performances against Giannis I think I've seen in the last couple of years, coming from Okongwu. And I don't know, man. Like last night was a good example, Brad. Like Collins, like AJ Griffin was out there. DeAndre Hunter was out there too. They look better than what Collins can do for this team, and Collins is making way more money than those guys. I just think you could get value in return for Collins and add something to this team that they don't have, right? And that's some extra shooting. Other thing for this team, and this is a little unrelated, and Trey bugs me with his lack of off-ball movement. Like there is not many things that frustrate me more in the league than seeing a guy that is as good of a catch and shoot point shooter as he is, just standing still, not doing anything. I don't even understand what the logic behind that is. He could be scoring so many more points, getting so many open looks. Like Bernie, you talked about this. You convinced me with Trey in college because you were so on top of it. The way he would get around screens in college and just be constantly moving and looking to catch and shoot. He doesn't do that anymore. I don't even understand what the logic is with that. You bring in another guy, DeJounte Murray, who is another ball handler, shooter, and a guy who can get you these open looks, but you don't take advantage of it. So, God, that frustrates me. And that being said, going back to Collins. Maybe you just move Trey back to the on ball, replace Collins with somebody who is going to move around a bit more, take open shots. Also, I think you need to clear out some minutes for Bogdanovich when he comes back too. And I would rather see AJ Griffin, DeAndre Hunter, and get some minutes over John Collins. That's just me though. So I would trade Collins before his value is too low to get that contract out of there for anything. All right, let's move on. This one's a little off the beaten path. It's another news story that had come out this week. It's the Montrezl Harrell Giannis situation that happened after the 76ers Bucks game. Okay, did you guys hear about that story?
Yeah, yes. That annoyed me.
Give you a little recap of it, just anybody listening that didn't hear about it. Giannis had a pretty poor game, got absolutely bodied by Joel Embiid for most of the game. Just did not go very well for Giannis in that game, and they ended up losing. So Giannis had an exceptionally poor shooting night. So after the game, Giannis being the hard worker, one of the reasons why I love him and I root for him, even though he's on the Bucks and I don't like that team, is because he's a humble dude and knows when to put the work in. So he's taken some free throw shots in Philadelphia in their arena after the game. And the fakest, goofiest tough guy in the league, maybe not fakest, but the goofiest tough guy. Let me just rephrase it and just leave it at that. The goofiest tough guy in the league, Montrezl Harrell, took exception to Giannis taking some free throws after the game and came out, started yelling at him. They got into a little confrontation with each other. And, essentially Montrez was, threatening to beat him up if he didn't stop shooting free throws in a basketball arena. And my cap or no cap, and I kind of just said it, but I just wrote that Montrezl Harrell is one of the biggest clowns in basketball because genuinely, he shows it time and time again. He really is incredibly goofy. This is one of the dumbest stories I've seen in a long time. Could you imagine getting this upset for something so silly? What do you guys think about this? Do you think he's a giant goof or what?
Bro, no cap. Montrezl Harrell is a scrub. I'm so tired of him. He shouldn't even be on the team. That should be Charles Bassey's spot. He legit shouldn't even be on the team, bro.
Thank you. Oh my God, thank you.
He's a scrub, man. He played 1 minute and he's going out there talking like this, trying to move Giannis, a 2-time MVP. Like, Trez, if you were in Milwaukee and you shot poorly, if you somehow magically managed to get in the game, Giannis wouldn't come out and try to move you and, big time you like that. He would just let you shoot your free throws because it's the NBA. That's what people do. You shoot in arenas after games. So get Trez out of here, man. He's not even going to make it on the team for past the deadline. He needs to get ready for China. He's a 6'7" center.
What about you, Bertie?
I mean, in terms of, I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into that story. Obviously you have the worker trying to get home after a game, and you just see a NBA superstar just trying to shoot some free throws. So I get that there's like both like, I mean, the story is great because both guys are trying to basically do what they need to, right? NBA superstar trying to work on his game to get better. Obviously was frustrated by the night. And then you got a worker just trying to go home, man. He's trying to go home after the game. So I don't necessarily blame him. I know if you ever worked in retail or if you ever worked in those type of jobs, like, when there's a person in the store just shopping and you're trying to just be like, bro, it's like closing time. Like it's time to get out. So that I can sympathize with the worker. But in terms of like Montrezl Harrell's part of it, I do agree with you guys. I think that it's pretty disappointing because, I think Trez played so well in those Clipper teams and you thought maybe he just bamboozled us because like he was so great. Like he played tough. He was that guy. And then all of a sudden he goes to these other teams, the Lakers, goes to Philadelphia and Charlotte, and it's just not the same guy that he was in Los Angeles Clippers, that is. And so I think that he is a bit of I think it's just like fighting over that stuff is just clownish. I think that it's frustrating. And so I would say that I think that Trez is a clown, but in terms of like the worker trying to go home, like I get that, man. I get it.
Yeah, but is that Montrez's place to do that though?
No, and I think the worker was probably pissed. I think he talked to Giannis.
Sure, which is the perfect thing to do. Nicely ask, "Hey, I'm trying to get home. Can you get out of here?" Right? Not like have this dude who logs 1 minute or two and he comes out because. And Bernie, I'm going to ask you this question because you and I have discussed the hate towards Giannis by.
Gilbert.
Some American basketball players, right? Do you think that Montrez would have done this to another guy that isn't Giannis? Do you think it would, like, let's say it's Anthony Davis. We know Anthony Davis would not be putting in this work, so pardon him as my example. He would never stay after a game and shoot free throws. He just wouldn't do it. Do you think that Montrez would be doing this if it wasn't Giannis? Or like a European player, I guess I should say.
Absolutely
I really don't
not.
think
No.
I don't think he would either.
Yeah, I think the reason why is because I think a lot of people think that Europeans are soft. I think there's still that stigma that they're soft. You can bully them easily. And I just think that that's not the case with Giannis. I think Giannis's character and everything that is Giannis, I think you just can't bully him. Like he's just gonna be like, bro, get out of here. Like I'm trying to do my thing. And so that I'm glad that Giannis is kind of standing his ground for. So, yeah, I don't think it would happen with any other superstar. Like if LeBron James is shooting after a game, I don't think anybody's bothering him. I think if I'm trying to think of other guys that would be the same, like Steph Curry, for example. Like if Steph was like, I just want to shoot some free throws or threes after the game, no one would bug him. But
if it was Fred VanVleet, he wouldn't have said anything, man. Trez just he just thought he could respect Giannis. It's ridiculous.
Intimidation tactics.
And he was telling the Nations he would beat him up too. Like I wish I could put money on that fight. Tenacious would dog walk him, man.
He probably would, honestly. I would say Giannis would probably dog walk him too, to be fair. Yeah, that I don't know. That we'll get off that story. I just wanted to include it because Montrez, I mean, the dude literally almost just got himself kicked out of the league, getting in trouble this offseason. I think you just stop, man. Just chill. Just play better basketball. Because honestly, and Bernie, you hit on this just a second ago too. You're killing it today, Bernie. Compliments, my brother. This dude, Montrezl Harrell, is one of the greatest examples of a bamboozle the NBA has ever seen. Because he benefited so much, so tremendously from his chemistry with Lou Williams that it actually convinced people that he was a legit player in the NBA. He has not even sniffed legitimacy anywhere besides that stretch of time. And even then, when it came to big games for those Clippers teams, still couldn't, they couldn't do anything with him. So I don't know, man. I can't stand that dude. I just had to bring it up. I thought that was absolute clown behavior. I'm sick of the stigma against Giannis and these dudes. Like, cool it, man. It's just, this dude is leaps and bounds better than you. And even if it wasn't that, you still don't have the right to go around and bully your peers and, tell them they can't shoot the basketball. Shut up, dude. All right. Here's another one. This is a trade one, but I really am feeling pretty strong about this. All right. We're going to stick with the Bucks here for a second. I think the Bucks should go really hard for Miles Turner. I think Miles Turner is just about the best player that the Bucks could go fill a spot on their team with. Because, and this we're going to come back to this guy in just a second, but there's a lot of rumors about Jay Crowder in the news right now. He's not playing for the Suns. He wants to be traded. And the Bucks have emerged as the leading candidate to attain Jay Crowder. I saw that and I thought, it's okay. I kind of like the fit. I like the mentality. He's been there, good defense, but this team doesn't have a lot of assets. If they make one move, that's probably the only move they're going to make. So,
Grayson Allen.
Grayson Allen is definitely somebody to consider replacing, but I see a lot of wear on the tires on old Brook Lopez, right? And I really worry about him, the longevity, how much left he has in the tank. He's pretty critical to what that team does, Brook Lopez. And I think if you could go get Miles Turner, he's an incredible upgrade on a lot of the things that Brook Lopez brings you. What do you guys think about that? You think the Bucks should look at Miles Turner?
I think they should look at him, and I think he'd be a good backup, but I wouldn't say he's an upgrade to Brook. I feel like Brook is the best at what he does right now. I can't name a center who's shooting as well from three and blocking shots at the same rate. And then Brook also has the post game. If shots aren't falling, Miles doesn't have the post game. Brook can still go into his Nets bag and get you buckets in the post. But I do love the idea of Miles being that safety net in case Brook does get hurt or anything.
Yeah, I mean, he needs.
Don't think that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bernie. I'll ask my question afterwards.
So the only thing I was gonna say, I agree. I mean, you definitely you have Serge Ibaka right now is kind of like a backup to them. Bobby Portis. Those guys are they're not the same as if Brook Lopez goes out, and so I do agree with Brad. I think you should try to get him as a backup or some sort of rotational guy in there to kind of relieve Brook Lopez of some of those duties, because I just think. With Serge Ibaka playing those 11 minutes, not really giving you much, but I think that if you look at if you can add him to the roster, if you can add him to this team, I think they definitely are a game changer. I want to see Chris Middleton back, man. I think it's we have to start worrying about him a little bit and what the injury is for him, because the fact that he's not back right now is concerning and alarming for me.
Yeah, I see. I wonder if that's kind of a Jamal Murray type situation where they're just like, hey, we don't really need you right now. Let's just get you as absolute healthy lockdown as we can get you before we rush it and bring you back. That kind of seems like what it is to me. I don't know if I'm worried about Chris Middleton, but they really are in desperate need of Chris Middleton. That is for sure. My only pushback, and this is my question, I wonder if I think you can see that Brook, I mean, he's still super good. He still fits that role perfectly well, like what you're saying, Brad. there's not many players who maximize that 3-point shot and, you know, the rim protection that Brook gives you. But when I watch them, I mean, he does look old, man. And I wonder if it's more a byproduct, like if his continued success is more a byproduct of it, just you happen to be on the court with Giannis, right? And I wonder if like getting a younger dude who could move around a little bit more, because I really think Miles Turner is pretty underrated in the 3-point shooting department. I know he's not necessarily Brook Lopez, but he's on Indiana. It's not like he gets a ton of open looks to take quality shots, right? And his blocking, I mean, his rim protection is super solid too. I think I totally, you know, your guys' opinions are super valid. I'm probably wrong here. I just think he's actually an upgrade to Brook at this point based on youth and what he could grow into as far as, you know, a few years with this team, what it would look like. You know, you might be getting a guy that actually improves and maybe becomes, you know, a better version of what Brook is, right? Like, because Brook kind of turned into that guy late in his career. But if maybe you maximize that with a 27-year-old right now, it's a little different.
Yeah.
I want to give you guys three teams for Miles Turner, and I want you guys to tell me what team you think should be the most desirous of getting him, of attaining him as a player, and what would be the best fit. Bucks, Chicago Bulls, Charlotte Hornets. What do you guys think? I mean, obviously the Hornets need a center so desperately. They need everything. They suck. What team do you think of those three should go after him the most? And which team do you think he would make the most impact on?
That's a good one.
Lakers.
Right? Seriously, please.
That's super fair. That's super
fair.
My
goodness,
they should sell out for Miles Turner. I love Miles Turner. I think he's pretty underrated too at this point.
I would say the Bulls are close, but he doesn't fix their problems because they need a playmaker and because, you know, they still have to play Vooch somehow.
Yeah, but he's better than Vooch is right now.
Exactly, he is, but how bad is that Vooch trade going to look if they, you know, shelf him for Miles in a trade?
True.
So it's more like politics there. I would say the Bucks, just because, not even as an upgrade to Brook, because I still think Brook is doing a great job. I would just say like he can alleviate some of that pressure and let him exactly.
Yeah.
And then on offense, Giannis would be good. Oh no, I was just gonna say Giannis can play. Their best lineups are with Giannis at the 5, right? So Miles could play that 4 on offense. I might have that backwards. On offense, yeah, he could play the 4 on offense. Giannis can play the 5, be the role guy, and Miles could space the floor. Yeah.
Oh yeah, be super nice. What about you, Bernie? You think it's just the Lakers? The Lakers is where he should go, probably.
It's probably that. But if we had to pick between your teams, I would say the Hornets. They just need for sure things, man. I just feel like right now the Hornets are in no man's land. It seems to me like the direction that they want to go in is obviously that LaMelo Ball is the guy for them, but like the rest of the team, like if we look at their roster, I mean, it's just like filled with just maybes, filled with a bunch of maybes, and let's see what happens with these guys. Obviously, I think Gordon Hayward is a guy that, you know, I think probably could potentially be in the buyout market at some point. But like the rest of the team, I'm just not convinced right now with any player besides LaMelo, and right now he's hurt, and so it's kind of one of those things that. And Terry Rozier too, to be fair. Like Terry Rozier.
Kelly Oubre doesn't move you?
Not like he used to, man.
In a good way. Moves me.
Not like he used to, man. I think that he's definitely had his better moments elsewhere. But yeah, I'm just not convinced with anything that the Hornets are doing. And by adding Miles Turner, I think it does sure up some things for the Hornets when they need for surefire things. You know, they've already tried this rebuilding process and, you know, picks and other young players, but it just hasn't worked for them. Besides, you know, landing on LaMelo Ball, and that was just because he was. They fell into it, and it wasn't like, oh, we are going to take a risk on him, and so. I think that's going to be one of those things that he probably should go to the Hornets just to be a for sure thing, because I mean, it's not looking too hot for them. I think right now they're the worst team in the.
I mean, even if they're not record wise, they're the worst team I've seen.
I mean, it's like them and the Pistons.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, Bernie, you actually just kind of you got into my next one, which I was going to say. I'm not necessarily saying I believe this one way or the other, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. I think the Hornets. I'm just going to say they might be the worst managed team in all of basketball. Like, I don't even know if that's really that controversial because really, when you look at this team, fired Borrego, which Bernie, we had our disagreements with them on that when it happened, immediately when it happened. We thought that was a poor move. And they get, I don't even know the term you would want to use. They got bamboozled with old Kenny Atkinson, right? And then you fall back on old habits and you go back to Steve Clifford. And like, I don't know, man. I don't even dislike Steve Clifford, but if you look at the way he's running this team, there's clearly no plan for what they're going to be, what they're going to do in the next couple of years. I actually, now that I'm saying it, I probably do think they're the worst managed team in the league because I don't even see what the path for them to get better is. They play Miles Plumlee like 30 minutes a game.
I mean, Plumlee's not bad. I mean, he's not.
I mean, what are you doing though? Where does that take you? You have Kai Jones. You just drafted him. What are you doing? He doesn't even get minutes.
That's true. You might as well play him.
You're going nowhere fast no matter what you do. Miles Plumlee is 30, and he's not that great. He's a solid backup center, but he's your starting player or starting center, takes all your minutes from your young dudes. I don't get it with this team. What do you think? Are they the worst managed team in the NBA right now? Pelinka's right there. I mean, he's waving, too, from the other coast. He's saying, hey, look at me. I'm here, too.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Lakers for sure.
Okay.
As a Lakers fan.
They have more pressure on them to do better, too, and higher expectations. So, yeah, that's fair.
I got Lakers 1, Brooklyn Nets 2, Hornets 3. As my
Brooklyn is 2. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. Just because those teams, they're in should be doing better based on the assets and all the expectations they have, surely. And one thing, too, this team is a huge sliding door. If the Warriors had made the right choice and took LaMelo, too, and they ended up with Wiseman, what would this team even be right now? This would so far and away. I mean, they are the worst team in the league right now. They would be G League team if they had drafted James Wiseman. I mean, he's
Bobcats 2.0.
Yeah, really. They would be atrocious. They were handed LaMelo Ball. Do you think, let me ask one more question for them. Do you guys think LaMelo is going to stay there for like long term? Or is it like there's just literally no chance this dude stays in Charlotte?
If they don't start building around him soon, there's no chance.
Yeah, I don't like what could they even do at this point? Like they're not like they could turn it around by next year. I don't
They
think
don't land Wemby.
Yeah, I get that's literally it. Wembanyama or bust for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, my thing is if they don't move forward with him. They don't move forward with LaMelo Ball in terms of like, hey, this is the direction we want to go in. This is the way we're going. Then I think he's definitely leaving. I mean, why would I want to stay in Charlotte when there's no promising players around me to build around? I mean, this is kind of the reason why Michael Jordan is one of the worst GMs in the world. Best player, one of the best players of all time, but one of the worst GMs of all time. It's like
absolutely one of the worst.
Two opposite goats at the current moment for him. But yeah, man, I think that it's time to move on from the
Charlotte Hornets in general. Let's just pretend they don't exist anymore.
Yeah,
they're tragic. If any team should do everything they can to just be, bottom out, it is them. Just trade everybody. Let LaMelo just be the only guy that does anything on the team. Mm-hmm. All right, 3 more, and then I'm done. We talked about this one last time. I'm going to combine these two teams just because we did discuss them in the last cap or no cap, but I feel even more strongly about it. I think Portland is pretty legit. I know Dame re-injured his calf last night, but when he's healthy, I think you're seeing like a legitimate, like a team that is actually pretty competitive. And I could see them actually not even just making the playoffs, but I could see them like giving a team in the first round some troubles because, again, they're pretty well balanced, and they don't even have who is eventually going to be their second best defender, Gary Payton III. He's not even there yet. So they have great defense in Jeremy Grant, Gary Payton. Is he the second? Yeah, he's the second, right? Oh my God, I said the third. Yeah, no, what am I talking about? Gary Payton, his dad. Other team I should have mentioned, I think they should look at Miles Turner too, because I think Nurkic is their biggest weak spot, like long term. Like he kind of limits what they can be just because he's kind of that plodding. He's like better Vucevic, basically, just barely better than Vucevic. That might even be questionable by some people. Do you guys think Portland is legit as I do? Because I see like this Jeremy Grant situation that's happening. He is everything that this team was hoping he was going to be. And Anthony Simons, for whatever people think of him as an efficient scorer, he's a pretty legit player at this point too.
Yeah, I'm gonna go no cap. I have to eat my words on the Blazers actually because I said the Kings would be better and that they would suck. But Chauncey Billups has done a great job coaching them. Mm-hmm. He's done a great job constructing their defense. If you watch them, their defense is on a string. Like the rotations are on point. They talk, they communicate. It's perfect. So yeah, and I think you're right, Pete. They could do great job, not a great job, but they could like make some noise in the playoffs. You know, they have great defenders like Justice Winslow, Jeremy Grant, GP2's coming back. They could really mess up a team's like season. And if they manage to land Miles Turner, I would say, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I would say that would put them in the contender category.
I actually agree with you. I legitimately agree with you, Brad.
Their defense would be like top 3. Miles,
I honestly think if you added Miles, they're a top 4 seed in the West. To me, personally, because and Bernie, it all comes down to balance. They have everything it takes to compete with any team on a night-to-night basis. They have scoring from Dame and Anthony Simons. They have lockdown defenders, at least 2 of them, if they're healthy, Jeremy Grant and Gary Payton. And they have young dudes who haven't even sniffed their potential in Shaedon Sharpe. You guys know how I feel about Shaedon Sharpe. We've seen some flashes of it. That dude can, move into like that 6th man spot, consistent, like really giving them solid defense and some points off the bench. Brad, I don't even think, to me, I think it's a hot take to most people. I don't think it's a hot take to me. I think they have all the pieces to legitimately be a contender if they added a guy like Miles Turner.
Mm-hmm.
I think Bernie definitely disagrees with us. Bernie, why do you disagree with that?
I just think that eventually it'll all come crashing down on the Portland Trailblazers. Not that because I don't think that they're necessarily a bad team. I just think that they're just young in some places. Like I think Anthony Simons, obviously 23 years old. I know that he's kind of developed a little bit more, but I just think that he still needs a little bit more seasoning to like really get going. And I think with Nurkic, like, you never know when he's going to be injured, man. I feel like he always has some injuries that just continue to like bombard him, and it just makes him unusable at times.
I agree.
Chauncey has been slashing his minutes, to be fair.
Nurkic is a huge limiter to this team. To me, that's why like I think really the difference is if you have Nurkic, you're kind of hard capped because he's going to get killed by a lot of players in the playoffs. There's so many guys that could just dominate Nurkic. I'd move off of him as soon as I could. Even if it's not Miles Turner, I'd start looking to get something out of Nurkic. Just get him away from the team, personally.
Yeah, that'd be my only concern. I think that they're very, I would say that they're very top heavy, this team. In terms like I feel like the role players are not, like they're good, but I just feel like, especially, I have Shaedon Sharpe, who's a young guy, obviously going to have up and downs this year. Gary Payton's hurt right now. And as a solid, I want to see him like out of the Golden State Warriors system and see what he can be. Little I like, but Wofford and Eubanks, I think that they're solid guys, but I think that it is a very, very tight. And if I could see by minutes, I think it's a very tight rotation, if I'm not mistaken. Like super.
I mean, looking at their team, it's not too bad because
they're pretty balanced.
Yeah, shouting out Chauncey again. Think about his Pistons team that he played on. Like it's almost like a future version of that team if they land Miles Turner. They have a lot of good guys who are good at what they do at each position. Even Eubanks has been good in his spot minutes. Oh, look, he leads the team in blocks. And like you have guys like Justice coming off the bench, and Justice is solid in his role. He makes, he plays defense, and he, same with Josh Hart. Shoots, plays defense, plays hard. I don't think they would need necessarily like a star to put them over that top because, I mean, they have Dame, but they wouldn't need another one. You said Simons is young, but they have Jeremy Grant. And we saw Jeremy Grant look like one of the best players in a series with LeBron and AD on both ends of the floor. So I think they could string it together.
Yeah, I honestly think a lot of this, whatever your expectations of Portland are, whatever you think about them as a team, again, a lot of it hinges on what you think of Jeremy Grant as a player. Like, to me, I have very high feelings on Jeremy Grant, and it goes beyond even the fact that he's a Syracuse player. That's my guy. I've always rooted for him. I love him, but this dude is legitimately one of the best defenders in the NBA on a night in, night out basis. It's not like there's nights off for Jeremy Grant on defense, and can give you 35-point games here and there, right? Like, that is legit. And Bernie, I do agree with you. Like, Anthony Simons, if he's your 2 with a bullet and you need him to be your 2, the team is not ready. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we saw it even in the Nets game. He got that Royce O'Neal tip in to win. That was all Anthony Simons' fault. He literally just let Royce O'Neal run to the basket without any means of stopping him or getting in his way. But this is where I've started to change my mind, all right? And part of the reason I was so down on Portland last year was because I thought Chauncey Billups was a really terrible coach. But it's still, it's a small sample size this season of them having success, but this is the difference. One of the reasons I felt like Chauncey Billups was not working as a coach last season for them was because specifically on defense, what he was trying to do did not work with the roster they had. He's trying to do all these, this pressing and like really aggressive defense. They don't have those guys. And Nurkic especially is not that dude. That is so poor for Nurkic as a player that it makes Nurkic stick out like a sore thumb with that defensive scheme. Yeah. Now they have the players to actually fit that. Shaedon Sharpe is going to grow into it. And like Brad said, like Justice Winslow is a backup guy, fits that mold. Even Nas Little. I like Keon Johnson too. Keon Johnson is like your 7th or 8th man off the bench is not a bad thing to have. Like, I know it's not like he averages like 3 points or something, but he's only been in the league 1 year. Like, he's another young dude who has some talent to grow into something. So I like Portland. I like Chauncey Billups. And I actually, more than anything, I like a lot of what they did this offseason. Way more now than I did when they did it, Yeah. Like, I like a lot of it.
Shout out
two of the
Sharpe.
Same one. Shout out to Shaedon Sharpe. I love him. Making my bold take that I would take him over Chet. Not that crazy anymore, even though it's still pretty crazy. Part 2 of this is Phoenix. I was so wrong about Phoenix, man. I don't know. I stand by it. A lot of it had to do with the Ayton, Monty Williams stuff, but flowers to Monty Williams, man. This dude is one of the best coaches in the NBA with a bullet. It should have been obvious last season. It was obvious for the most part, but just felt like the chemistry thing was going to come into play much more than it has. And this dude is legit one of the best coaches in the league. Like, not even a question. He's got these dudes playing better defense than they have for the most part. They're top 3 in offense and defense. I think they're the 3rd ranked offense and defense, actually. And that's without Chris Paul, without Cam Johnson. It's pretty impressive. Like, they look like a competitive team again, like a team that could go to the finals, in my opinion. What do you guys think about that? Is that cap? Or we?
Oh, that's heavy cap, Pete. They are the biggest frauds we've ever seen in our lives.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
They're playing great basketball, but it's the regular season. The regular season and the playoffs are just two different beasts. The things that they're doing so well, I don't think will translate to the playoffs, just like last year.
Yeah.
I mean, my worry for them too is like Chris Paul, man. Like, I believe he's hurt again, and it's just like, obviously the stats have fallen off, like scoring wise. He's just not scoring the same like he did before in the past. Field goal percentage was not great. I think that's the concern for me is like Chris Paul has kind of been on a little bit of a decline, and that's just normal because you get older, man. And it's just like you look at the stats, man, and yeah, the stats are like 27% from 3 is not good. Field goal percentage wise, 36, like that's borderline.
CP3?
Yeah, CP3.
It's a super small sample size, but that's terrible. That is really bad.
I mean, that's 10 games in. I know he's hurt, but
he's always hurt at this point.
What does he play? He's only played half their games, I think, right? He hasn't played. He's missed most of.
He's played 10.
Yeah, he's
played 10.
Yeah.
God, I mean, we did talk about that last time. I mean, there is legit room to be concerned that CP3 is finally, he is cooked. You know, he is not LeBron in terms of, you know, holding on to that physicality for too long. But yeah, I don't feel as strongly about this one as I do about Portland. I legit think Portland is actually really good. Phoenix could definitely be frauds, but I have to give them credit. Like, some of the moves they did make are really smart for this team. Like, Jock Landale, whatever you think, most people don't even know who Jock Landale is. He has been very good for them, like in terms of filling a hole that they needed. If they could do anything, if this team made any decision and made any trade, they need to go get another ball handler. They need to go get some guard that can just take some of the pressure off of CP3.
No Cameron Payne?
I mean, campaign is fine, but he can't be your guy. He just can't be. You have to go do something. I heard Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer was bringing up Bogdanovich from the Hawks as somebody they should look at. I think that's super interesting for them. That's a nice little scorer, somebody who could actually take pressure off of CP3, like I'm saying. They could go get a solid point guard. It would be pretty big for them. They really need it because like you're saying, Bernie, you have no clue what you're getting with CP3 for the rest of this season. You have no clue. And you don't know most seasons. Even when he was in his prime, you didn't know what you were going to get in down the stretch. So it's even more worrisome. I would borderline more concerned. I would go get a guard and just sit CP3 as much as I can for the regular season. Just, hey, need you for the playoffs. We'd rather see that come then. You know, bring that intelligence that you have onto the court then, and it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I still am not sure if Ayton is like he's a long-term member of this team. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but Ayton still looks pretty solid to me too. And I know that people have had some negative thoughts about him and his career as a player for the Suns, but he's a really talented dude. He can really guard a lot of positions and move around the court, not like many guys his size can.
Yeah.
All right, last one. I don't know how hot of a take this is, but I feel pretty strongly about this. And you, Bernie, you in particular, Brad, you too at this point. You guys know how much I love Luka, how much I love Giannis. I root for those guys all the time. Jason Tatum is the MVP so far this season.
Wow.
Is the MVP. He's been to me best player on the best team, plays incredibly good defense, and everything has been said about his offense that needs to be said. We all know how good he is on offense. He's playing the best defense of his life. He played great defense last year, obviously, too, but it just has carried over into the season. Jason Tatum's my MVP with a bullet right now. I would take him over almost anybody in the league. Cap or no cap?
This is a tough one, man. This is a tough one.
Bernie, this is tough for you especially. You have some conflicting biases here.
I mean, I love Luka as a player, man. He's been balling out. It's tough because, like, when I look at, let me go to, because we're the Mavericks right now in terms of their record. They're
middle.
Are they the 5th seed?
Yeah, they're in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, they're the 5th seed right now, 9-6. The Celtics are 13-3. I mean, I want to give it to Luka because I think that he has done really well, and I think that obviously he's probably one of the best players to watch in the league right now. But I think Tatum's there, man. I think Tatum is starting to contend with him, and I would probably go Tatum at this moment just because of the team record. Look at the way that they've been playing right now. Like 13-3 on a 9-game winning streak. Like they are clearly showing you like this is like last year was not a fluke. Like last year's run up until the finals was not a fluke. There wasn't going to be a setback because of the coaching situation. Wasn't going to be any of those type of things. But like you look at Tatum, man, like he's balling out. He grew out his hair a little bit. You know, kind of has a little more flavor to him. Like he's really he's really doing things for them that I think a lot of people weren't expecting they expect Tatum to be a good scorer, but they don't expect him to be like
not this defensive guy. He's
guy.
Legitimately. I think there's people who don't watch the Celtics enough who would think I'm being an idiot for saying this. Tatum is legitimately Defensive Player of the Year candidate right now. Like, to me, if you have him outside of your top 5 Defensive Player of the Year candidates so far, you don't watch enough Celtics basketball. This dude, there's never a night where he's not the best defender on the court, if not, the second. It just doesn't happen at this point in his career. He maximizes everything about his game on both sides of the court. And before you answer, Brad, that's the reason why I have to put him ahead of Luka. If Luka somehow, his nickname is Luka Magic, if he can magically keep this team somewhere in the 4 or 5 seed, it will be very tough for Tatum to win the MVP. It just will be, because this Mavericks team is just awful outside of Luka, Spencer Dinwiddie some nights, and Christian Wood, right? They're not good. It's like Luka is just doing everything imaginable. It's actually like he's breaking basketball in certain ways. Like, offensively, there's just nothing you can do to stop Luka. Problem is, it's just the defense will never match what Tatum can do on defense. I don't think it's really, really hard.
Yeah, I agree. I think that with the Celtics record, Tatum is easily the front runner right now. He's playing the best basketball we've seen him play, and he's really a superstar now. Like, before, like, people would call him a superstar, and you were kind of like, I don't know if he's reached that status yet. But
you had to question it.
Exactly. He's showing that he's easily, like, the scoring, the defense. He's still one of their best playmakers. Yeah, I'd say Tatum is the front runner, but someone I would like to shout out is Steph Curry, because I feel like the Warriors' record is doing him some injustice. He's playing some of the best basketball. Yeah. This is his best start to a year ever.
This is his second. I would say I've only seen him play consistently better than this one single time in his career, and it was the first, what was it, 2016, the 50, 40, 90, the first season anybody ever did that. That season, I mean, was just ungodly what he was doing, but
he's in that realm.
Team was so much better. Yeah, that team was so much better.
Yeah.
That team was so much better than this team, and he's still God. I've always been a kind of a Steph hater, but man, he is so fun to watch.
Yeah. He's doing unreal stuff.
This might be, I don't even know, this isn't part of the segment, but I was thinking about this the other night after watching this Warriors team beat the brakes off of the Knicks. Steph Curry might be the best leader of a basketball team in the 21st century. Like, just what he brings, like, night in, night out, the mentality, the effort he has every single night. Just, I really do think he probably is the best leader we've seen of a team in the 21st century. Do you guys think that's crazy?
I don't think so. I think he leads. He's not vocal like Draymond, but he leads by example, with what he does on the court. Yeah. And his work ethic.
Yep, doesn't punch teammates.
And exactly, he doesn't punch teammates, but also, like, just how he empowers his teammates to succeed. Like, never takes anything too seriously, in terms of, in a good way, though. I don't mean it like Ben Simmons. Like, that's not how I mean it. It's just like, if people aren't playing super well, he is going to do everything he can, like what a good coach does, to put them back in a spot to get it fixed, right? But there aren't many players who can do that on the court quite the way he can. And I think, like, LeBron would be a close contender, but even then, like, LeBron has sold some of his teammates down the river at certain points of his career, like, just giving up on guys as quick as he could, right? And Steph just does not do that. I don't know, man. That has made me appreciate him so much more as I've gotten older and grown up and to be an adult. I just respect Steph a lot more than I ever have at this point.
Me too, yeah. Especially since I have him on my fantasy team now, but that too, yeah.
That helps too. Just, I don't know. I'm going to sound like an old guy. It's just like, he is like a great example of, like, this is what is great about basketball. You can be this guy and be a top 10 player of all time and still be humble and still do the dirty work and do whatever you can to help your team succeed. And that is few and far between nowadays in the NBA. So, or just in general. So, got to give Steph his flowers while he's here. Love that.
Trae Young should take a note out of his book and get better defensively. And move off the ball.
Oh, Brad, that makes you're preaching.
I love watching Steph play defense now. He put in a lot of work on that end. Kudos to him.
Never settled for anything less than just trying to be the best he could, which is it's amazing stuff from Steph. And his playmaking, all of his game has just gotten better.
Yeah.
Ever. I mean, shooting was just crazy from the beginning, but everything else has always consistently gotten better as his career's gone on. But that's probably going to wrap us up on cap or no cap. Not too many hot takes, it seems, this time, but I'm glad to hear some of our takes on things. We will come back with another cap or no cap maybe in 2 weeks. How about we do this like every other week? I could probably gather enough stuff bi-weekly.
Okay.
Love it.
Get it.
All right. So with that being said, we're just going to end the segment and we're just going to end the show, guys. There's a lot of stuff we all have to do today. So as I would love to talk for another like 5 or 6 hours of basketball. It is time to get going. It's that time of the day. So hopefully you guys did enjoy today's episode. Of course, we talked a lot of different things. Clearly, the Zach Lavine news, the Brooklyn Nets, and of course, the cap or no cap segments. We had some great talking points, talking about Jason Tatum MVP status, the Phoenix Suns, the Charlotte Hornets, like a lot of great stuff. So if you guys missed anything throughout the week, videos will be popping up about the no cap or no cap and even the Brooklyn Nets segment. And of course, the Zach Lavine segment. But let us know in the comment section down below if you're live with us. What did you guys think of all this news that we talked about today? Want to hear your guys' comments and opinions in the comment section down below. And of course, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe. All that stuff helps out the channel tremendously. Lets you know and lets people know in the algorithm like, hey, you really mess with the channel. We're trying to grow this to become something special so you guys can have a place to have your voice and talk. And clearly, you guys have done that very well. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section and continuing to watch us from here on out. But with that being said, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Pete, for tuning in and, or I guess coming on, not really tuning in. You're coming on, helping out with the stream, of course. And I do appreciate all that.
Thank you for having us, my guy.
Yeah, thanks for having us always. Love it.
Yeah. And with that being said, well, everybody, we'll catch you on the next episode of The Charge. Obviously, I'll have to let you guys know when we're live. I'll post some stuff on the YouTube channel. Just because of coaching, it just makes it a little bit difficult to continuously go live. So I will let you guys know. Probably Sundays are the best for us three. In terms of just a live stream randomly, I'll let you guys know if there's anything live we need to go for, especially with breaking news. With that being said, thank you once again for tuning in, and we'll catch everybody on the next episode of The Charge. Peace out, everybody.